Welcome to the Seahawkers Podcast with your hosts, Adam Emmert.
This isn't a Hallmark movie. Sally Fields doesn't star in this film. This is Left Tackle.
And Brandan Schultz.
I believe, based on everything that I've seen from Bleacher Report in the past, that this is Jason Cole's fault.
Go Hawks!
This is the Seahawkers Podcast. I'm Brandan Schultz of the Military Seahawkers, and joining me, my good buddy and Montana Seahawker, Adam Emmert.
What is up, Brandon? It is good to be with you today on a beautiful day here in Montana and talking Hawks. This is great. I'm excited. I'm fired up today.
I'm fired up, but this might be the longest offseason ever. It was so bad.
In some ways, yeah.
It was so bad. I was watching two dudes playing Madden on NFL Network the other night, and it must have been some kind of championship match because it was like for $50,000. But it was fascinating. Wait a second,
they were playing video games for $50,000?
Yeah, you're doing the wrong thing. This podcasting thing, we should be playing video games.
Right. Okay. So 50. That's what you were doing? You were watching Madden?
I was watching a couple guys playing Madden, and it was very confusing because it was for the championship, and it was Chiefs versus Patriots.
Okay.
But the weird thing, Tony Romo was the quarterback for the Chiefs, and I think Larry Fitzgerald was one of the receivers. And
oh my God.
The Patriots had Colt McCoy at quarterback and was wearing number 12 like Tom Brady. And I think Mohamed Sanu was their top receiver, also wearing number 12. It was that was part of the reason why I think I tuned in so much, is just because I was trying to understand what was going on, for one.
Yeah.
And two, I was waiting to see which guy would like stand up and throw his controller to the ground first.
Right. Which is my favorite video game move. Like that is definitely my go-to. In fact, so much so in high school that our buddy Yancey, he made me buy my own Nintendo 64 controller because I had broken a couple. So I get that. But man, that sounds like that wasted your time about as much as all these Richard Sherman articles, all these Marshawn Lynch articles, pretty much everything else in this offseason that goes on forever. It's never ending, Brandon.
But we are in the month of the draft. We're in the month of the schedule release. So I can see at least things on the horizon that may be good, at least somewhat interesting.
The schedule release is one of the more overhyped things in all of everything.
Oh, it's overhyped.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'll give you that. But it's still. But
it's better than a trade rumor.
Exactly. Because it's actual. It's something.
Yeah, it's actually something. So we're gonna bring you guys a few different things today. We're gonna try to keep this all in the realm of reality instead of what you see out there among the media. So I hope you enjoy the show this week. There isn't a lot going on, so let's just be clear. That's one of the reasons why last week we really didn't get a show out. That, and I was in the road in Arkansas, and we tried a few different new methods of recording while I was on the road. And well, let's just say it wasn't quite successful. So we're gonna try something else. Brandon's got some more plans, and we'll get this down. We'll
just say that we're back to our usual, midweek release schedule. So
yeah, which I like better anyway.
But yes, we are going to be looking at real things. We have a look at a few potential draft picks on offense for the Seahawks, including a couple of guys on the offensive line and some pass catchers. We have the first Seahawks player to be arrested this offseason. That happened this past week. Coach Carroll provided some clarity on how competition on the offensive line is shaping up, so we can talk about that. And then we have some news from the NFL League meetings, including some rule changes. And apparently I have to revise my do better from last week.
We got to get our retractions in, because sometimes we're wrong. Sometimes we're wrong. Like you being a fan of Eddie Lacy. Sometimes you're just wrong.
Well, at the time I said my do better, I was correct, but there were some
extenuating circumstances.
Well, there are some things that happened after we released the show that I think we need to talk about, and so it makes for revision to my do better.
All right, man. Well, what do you want to hit up first?
Let's talk about draft prospects first, because to me this is. Now that we're in the month of the draft, it's time to start looking at this seriously. And WalterFootball.com, they have a list every year that tracks where the draft prospects are reported to have met with particular teams.
Yeah.
And I like to see who the Seahawks are meeting with, because inevitably guys from this list end up making the team. Go back to 2016. The Seahawks were reported to have met with Jermaine Ifedi. They met with Reese Odiambo. They met with George Fant and Zach Brooks. And, 3 of those 4 guys they drafted. One of them they brought in as an undrafted free agent. Go back to 2015. They met with Frank Clark and Christian Sokoli. And then in 2014, they met with Brock Coyle, Cassius Marsh, and Kevin Smith. So 2 of those guys, undrafted guys, and 1 draft pick. So if we were to have gone back and actually talked about those lists in previous years, we would have talked about these guys before they made the team. And that's kind of what I want to get into in this month, is maybe talk about some of those guys that the Seahawks are looking at and could potentially make the team based on either undrafted or a draft pick.
Well, I like it, man. I like how you sleuth that out there to understand that, when they meet with guys, that they generally bring them in as draft picks. So the guys that you were about to talk about, there's a real shot that you're going to see these guys in a Seahawks uniform.
I think so. And it might just be 2 or 3. Well, it may only be 2. I mean, maybe 0 for all we know, because oftentimes it seems like there might be guys that clearly they don't catch all of the visits. Some of these go unreported. And it seems like the Seahawks, they have fewer of the Seahawk visits reported than just about any other team. But just the track record going off of that, I think it's a good chance. And so on our list today, we're looking at guys on the offense. There's about 5 guys, just offensive guys that have been reported so far. And for me, when I looked at these guys, whatever was out there, whether it was interviews, their YouTube highlights, or just news stories on them, I wanted to look at them in terms of their demonstration of grit, which we know that the Seahawks look for in these guys. I wanted to look at their athleticism and if they had any leadership qualities that really stood out.
All right.
And let's start off with the first guy, and this is a guy that Rob Staten mentioned from Seahawks Draft Blog. He has Isaac Asiata, the guard from Utah.
Yeah.
Has him going to the Seahawks mock draft in the 3rd round and scored very highly in his trench explosion formula. The Seahawks reportedly met with Asiata at the Senior Bowl. And so that's where the 2 are linked. Asiata, of course, a teammate of Garrett Bowles, who a lot of Seahawks fans would really like to see fall to number 26. He played tackle for Utah. I've seen some mocks that have had Bowles fall as far as 26 to the Seahawks, but mostly not getting past Denver at number 20. What did you see from him?
Well, I didn't go back and watch anything on any of these guys, but I did, just look up some of their basic information and some of the things that maybe you should ought to know about them. And one thing that stood out about Asiata was, a couple things. One is his brother's Matt Asiata, the running back for the Minnesota Vikings.
Formerly of the Vikings, yeah.
Yeah. Another thing that was interesting about him was his versatility. He not only played guard, but when their starting center went down, he played center for a period of time. And it sounds like if he had to, he's got longer arms. So if you had to kick him out to tackle, he might be able to get it done there. So one of the things we know that the Seahawks look for is versatility in their offensive linemen, and he seems to have a bit of that. The other thing is that they look a lot for features and characteristics that are unusual, right? I mean, things that, what do you do that stands out? What is unique about your skill set? And he is remarkably strong. I mean, he threw up 35 reps on the bench press, one of the top performers out of all the offensive lineman prospects. And by all accounts, has a pretty nasty mean streak to him, which I love. That's exactly what I want. And we all know that that's somebody that Tom Cable gravitates towards. The idea that you could pick up a guy like that, say in the 3rd, 4th round, or just with one of those 3rd round picks, since we have a multitude of them, man, that'd make me pretty darn happy. I mean, the thing about it is everybody says there's nobody that can play offensive line in this draft. Well, we don't honestly know that for sure. So you look for guys that have the type of characteristics that maybe they could perform. And he's a nasty run blocker and with some versatility and with, pedigree, a family pedigree of NFL players. I'd be pretty excited about a pick like that.
Yeah, he seemed to mock out in about the 3rd round pretty consistently. The Dolphins, I saw some reports that they might be interested in him as well. You bring up his mean streak, his NFL.com scouting profile. One of the scouts says, quote, he has to harness all of that nasty out on the field. So, yeah, when you see a guy and nasty in his scouting profile, you can pretty much bet that the Seahawks are probably looking at him. And like you said, you brought up his relation to Matt Asiata for the Vikings, so he could be on the Vikings radar as well. One interesting thing that stood out to me, looking at the grit factor, he did serve a 2-year church mission. So that's something that, you just look for some of those types of things that stand out, things that other guys don't typically do. And to me, I think that would be a demonstration of that.
Yeah, that definitely does speak to that characteristic for sure. And we've all heard me freak out about the offensive line for weeks now and all that. And look, I'm still concerned, but what I really want is just for them to make a real live effort at making this better. And honestly, the signings of Jokel and Ibushi, those are solid signings. Those are things that give us a real opportunity to get better. You bring in 1 or 2 guys on offensive line in the draft as well, who have the opportunity and the skill set to possibly be a contributor. And now I feel a lot better about it. Just if you make a real live attempt at it. And I think we can see that as much as we're disappointed as I think a fan base as a whole in the lack of big name free agents when it comes to the offensive line, if you bring the 2 guys in that we did, bring in a couple draft picks, I would feel like they made a real effort at it. And this is the type of player that, the nasty, having to contain the nasty. I'd much rather have a guy that you got to reel back the nasty, kind of like with Breno Giacomini.
Right.
Because you can't teach nasty. I mean, it's either in you or you're not. I mean, a lot of the players call it the dog inside of you, right?
Right.
And I think that's a guy that fits that profile. So, after looking at a little bit about him, I'd be excited about that.
Yeah, you can see why the Seahawks have an interest in Asiata. And speaking of guys that have that sort of NFL pedigree, Zach Banner, one of the other offensive linemen that they met with, a tackle from USC, his biological father is Lincoln Kennedy, who played in the NFL.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, the Seahawks reportedly met with Zach Banner at the Combine, and he's ranked number 12 on NFL.com's list of offensive line prospects. There's been some disparity. I've seen him like around a 5th round prospect and kind of more of a late round because, well, talk about unique traits. The unique trait with Banner everyone talks about is his size. I mean, he's a
huge monster. Yeah. Which, when you said Lincoln Kennedy is his biological father, that
makes
comes
all the sense,
together.
right?
Yeah, that makes all the sense. You bet.
And kind of a unique guy in that just he got up to 385 as a junior in college. Before in his sophomore season, he had a really solid sophomore season when he gained the weight as a junior. Not so great, but he bounced back and had another solid senior season. Talking about grit with Zach Banner before his 2014 season, where he started every game at right tackle. He had surgery on both of his hips. So able to come back from a surgery to both of his hips. The thing about athleticism, though, he would definitely buck the trench explosion formula trend if the Seahawks were to draft him. He was way down on the list. His Spark score had him like in the bottom 3% of NFL athleticism. And the other interesting thing about Banner is a lot of people are projecting him to move inside to guard. But at 6'9", do you really want to like a 6'9" dude at guard in front of Russell Wilson?
Yeah, okay. The height of the guard in terms of if Russell Wilson can work around that, I'm not worried about that at all. He did, after all, play behind the biggest college offensive line his senior year at Wisconsin. I mean, they were monsters. But so that doesn't really concern me. What concerns me about being 6'9" and being kicked into guard is, having the correct bend and all that to have the leverage. I mean, low guy wins on the line. I mean, that's the old adage, right?
Right.
And when you're that tall, it makes it difficult. I'm less interested in this guy by a fair amount, mainly because the idea of 2 things. Number one is, I mean, to get to 385, that does speak to work ethic to a degree, and that definitely worries me. I mean, I watched the James Carpenter experiment go down forever. and going between injuries, an injury history, along with weight concerns, like, man, I just don't have a lot of tolerance for it.
I can tell really, you have issues with guys that gain weight and then lose it again.
Look, this is why I have issues with it. If your job, how you make a living, is to keep your body in shape to be a professional athlete, that is your job. That is what you're getting paid for. If somebody paid me to be in awesome shape, I promise you, I would be in awesome shape. I'm still an average dude. Like I'm in average shape. I'm not like cut or anything. And nobody's paying me to do that. Like I ran 5 miles a day, not because somebody was, writing me a check, but because, just keep your stuff in order, like just try a little bit.
Yeah. It makes you feel good.
Right. So the idea that you've got these guys that can't even do it when this is their future, this is not only the paycheck for themselves, but for generations of their family, man, like that lack of motivation, that really concerns me. And then the other thing is being as big as he is at tackle, the struggle with speed rushers in this day and age where defensive linemen, or especially the edge rushers, they're not getting bigger. I mean, the ideal mold is that Von Miller mold, 250, 260, somewhere in there, super quick. He'd struggle hardcore with that. He's a slow dude. If they did draft him, late, that's a great place to take a flyer on a guy, and I get it. I'd be surprised if he made the roster when it was all said and done.
Oh yeah, and anybody drafted in the 5th round or later, you can kind of say that about, especially when it comes to the offensive line. And I think why the Seahawks would like him. He was a finalist for the 2012 Watkins Award, which is for the nation's top African-American high school student athlete. He has that on his resume. Also, he just seems like a cool dude. There's a video out there of Banner stuck in an elevator filled with offensive linemen. Apparently, they were in there for 2 hours in an elevator. And what does he do? He pulls out his phone and turns the moment into a freestyle rap. So he might be one of my favorite personalities out of the 5 guys that we're talking about today. In terms of that, he stands out to me, too.
Oh, all right. Well, that's pretty cool. I mean, you like having good dudes on your team. Yeah. That's for sure. I mean, we all enjoyed that. I mean, we all miss Greg Scruggs still.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, those big personalities, they're a lot of fun. No doubt about it.
Well, moving on, let's move on to talk about some pass catchers. And
so before you get into it,
okay,
I just need to be honest with you.
Okay.
I have no interest in drafting more pass catchers right now.
I can understand that. And these guys actually
met with the team. I get it.
They met with the team, but outside of the tight end, these receivers are probably not draft picks. They're probably undrafted free agents.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense then.
But I do want to talk a little bit about Antony Auclair in particular, the tight end out of Laval. And if you've never heard of Laval, that's because it's not a college in the United States. It's actually in Canada.
Wait a second. Is this like when people get like a doctor's degree in like Aruba or something like that? And then,
I think they have actual universities in Canada.
Oh, so it's in Canada.
Yeah.
Okay. So that could be accredited. I think that's probably a real thing.
I think it's actually a real place where people go to school.
All right. So Laval.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, because backup tight ends from Rice wasn't obscure enough. We need to go to Canada now too.
Well, are you telling me that you did not watch the Vanier Cup title between Laval and Calgary? Laval, the 31-26 win in that title game.
I missed that.
I mean, I'm guessing it's Canada's version of the college football championship, just judging by the size of the trophy that I saw in the pictures. But I have no way of knowing.
Yeah, that's tough to know. I've never heard of that sort of competition ever. I have no idea who would be playing for that. But I do like that you tried to relate size of trophy to importance of competition. Right. I think that's great.
It's always size of trophy. I mean, if you go into somebody's house and they have a trophy, like a karate trophy that's like 3 feet tall, they probably beat somebody good.
Yeah. So what you're saying is size matters.
Yes, in terms of trophy size.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, well, that means that curling trophy I won 2 years ago, that was a big trophy. That means I was a big deal.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, all right. I like your theory here.
And Antony Auclair, a big deal too. He's the number 2 overall prospect for the CFL draft. And this was before the East-West Shrine game where he apparently spoke to 25 teams there. One of those teams was the Seahawks. athletic guy, ran a 4.8 40 and had a 9.9 broad jump. He's 6'5", and that was with an injured hamstring at his pro day where he got those numbers. So it's still pretty solid numbers for a guy who's a little bit dinged up, fighting through a hamstring injury.
So I just wanted to double check. Jimmy Graham's still on the roster, right?
Oh yeah,
and we brought Luke Wilson back, right?
You got him for 1 year, yeah.
Okay, and we drafted the best inline blocking tight end in all of college football last year, right? Nick Vanette, he's still on the roster, right?
Brandon Williams is off. There's a spot for a fourth tight end.
No. I bring in one more extra lineman to compete, and then cut him, and then just sign some dude off the scrap heap, man.
This would be a guy I've seen him go anywhere from 4th round, 5th round, to potentially being undrafted.
You mean rounds we don't have picks in?
Right. Well, we got 6th and 7th. If he were to fall to the 6th or 7th round and the Seahawks hadn't picked up a tight end yet, there's other tight ends that the Seahawks are reportedly considering too in the draft. Jimmy Graham's on the last year of his contract. You don't know if Nick Vanette's going to work out. You have 1 year deal on Luke Wilson. I think we're going to see the Seahawks take a tight end at some point in the draft.
It would be a lot like when I got all frustrated with all the running backs they took last year.
Even one tight end, you're going to be upset.
Well, here's what I'm saying. I turned out to be wrong on that. We needed all those guys, and we still got a little thin at running back. So, maybe I'm off base on this one, but my gut reaction is we don't need one right now. Now, being Captain Optimistic over here, like with you, Brandon, you're usually the optimistic guy. You're like, Jimmy Graham's in this last year. We don't know if Nick Vanette is worth a crap, and we only got, we signed Luke Wilson, but who else we got then? Dude, no, we got Jimmy Graham, we got Nick Vanette, we got Luke Wilson for next year.
The next year.
It's looking good. Looking good.
Okay, well, let me just read a little bit from his scouting profile, because when I saw that he was more of a mauler than a technician, it made me think instantly that Cable would like him. And but then when I saw, and this is the downside, his scouting profile says he has limited hip sync. And, probably what most people expect him to go undrafted, because you can't have a guy whose hip sync is limited. Yeah,
you need full hip sync to be effective at the tight end position. I mean, I know that is the number one quality I look for, not whether or not dude just like blocks or how long his levers are or what his short area quickness might be. Yeah, the hip sync.
Hip sync is key.
Yeah, no, that's key. That's key. That's a new one. That's a new draft term from this year.
Add limited hip sync to the list.
Yes, add hip sync to the list of things you look for. But do you think he could play tackle? You think that's if he's a mauler than a technician?
Looking at some of his tape in the East-West Shrine game, he has the ability to block, but he also seems like a solid pass catcher too. I mean, he had, I think, 6 catches for 70 yards in there in that championship game that I mentioned up in Canada. So, looks like he's a versatile guy.
Gotcha.
I don't think they'll get him, but.
No, you don't think so? Even though he's one of the dudes that actually visited?
Well, they visited him. It was 25 other guys at the East-West Shrine game, or 25 other teams that he met with. So,
sure.
I want a 25. It's not like they brought him in for a private workout or anything at the VMAC.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess that's a good point. Now, I know you also had a couple wide receivers on this list.
The first one is a guy I like a lot, wide receiver out of Grambling. And per reports, the Seahawks met with Williams at the Louisiana Tech Pro Day. And I don't know why Grambling players were there. Maybe that's it's just like the closest big school or something. But
they may not have had a pro day of their own. They may not have had
Grambling
enough,
probably not a pro day type of school. No,
right? Not enough prospects to really have a pro day, so you get invited to something where, right.
Like and Grambling an FCS team. So
is it really? I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Stuart Court of the UK Seahawkers, he actually blogged about Williams this past week on ProFootballSpot.com. He ran. This is the impressive thing. At this pro day, he ran a 4.35 40. If he would have been at the combine, that time would have been good for number 3 among receivers.
Okay, so always add about another 0.05 of a second to a pro day. The pro day ones are always faster, than the combine ones.
Well, so, that's still what a 4.40. Yeah,
4.4. You're going. You're cruising. How tall is this guy?
6'1". Okay. 35-inch vertical.
Oh, that's impressive.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So an athlete.
Yeah, he had a huge year at Grambling, led them to a conference title. Like I mentioned, he is an FCS guy, so not playing against the top competition, but by all accounts, it sounded like he showed that he belonged when he was going up against guys at the Senior Bowl. He's kind of seen as a potential late round guy. You know, if he checks out in terms of character. I watched an interview with him. 2 takeaways. I really like his hair, and he's a little kooky in a good way, which I like. So he has kind of that type of personality that you would say, I want that guy on my team.
Is he kooky like Thomas Rawls kooky? Or is he kooky like Earl Thomas kooky?
More Thomas Rawls kooky, like goofy, like happy-go-lucky type kooky.
So kind of the Michael Bennett / Thomas Rawls kind of personality?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll give him that. Well, one last potential late-round pick and probably an undrafted free agent type guy, Deangelo Yancey, a wide receiver out of Purdue, apparently made a private visit with the team. And I talked about how private visits tend to be more substantial because the team only gets 30 of these private visits in the off season. So they used up one of them by bringing in Yancey from Purdue. He has one of the mouthpieces with teeth, on the outside, so it looks like you have fangs. I kind of like that look.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Okay. Does that factor into your Spark score or anything?
I don't think it does. It's just kind of a good
his
look.
name ought to, because Deangelo Yancey is a great name.
It's a solid name.
I kind of want him just for that.
Well, when you see there is something of concern in his scouting profile, because when you're a receiver and catching the football is listed among your weaknesses, I'm guessing you have a few issues. It said he failed to catch at least 50% of targeted throws in any season at Purdue. Drops have been an issue throughout his career.
All right. I've already heard enough about Deangelo Yancey then. Yeah, it's like being like, man, I love this quarterback, except for he really struggles throwing the football.
Yeah, accuracy. Like he has
he's just not good at it.
Has trouble getting it to his own teammates. Yeah.
Right. Can't hit the broadside of a barn at 5 feet. Can't complete more than 50% of his passes. He'll be a keeper. That's maybe you bring him in as
that's what I mean. Undrafted guy. And I was watching some of his 2015 game against Iowa. He had 2 passes hit him legitimately in the hands. But he had other passes where like a dude had his hand on like almost inside of his face mask, and he still managed to make the catch and break away from the tackle and gain some yards. So as you see some of these he was a high volume guy at Purdue. He was like their only guy they threw to him a lot. So kind of an interesting guy in that respect too. Speaking of interesting, his NFL.com scouting profile says he can climb over the top if his runway is long enough.
Wow. Well, that's interesting. So, like, what does that mean? He can climb over the top if his runway is long enough? Like, I mean, he's not a mountain climber. He's a receiver. Like, do you mean?
I have no idea what it means.
So my guess would be that has to be. No, because climb over the top makes no sense. He can get, if it said he can get on top with if his runway is clear enough.
It's as if his runway is long enough.
Long enough. Okay, man, I need to start writing draft profiles, man, and just start making up stuff like this. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
But yeah, one of those guys that maybe consider if he goes undrafted, one of those names that you might see among the undrafted free agents that the Seahawks look for. So, the Kevin Smith type of player that they bring in just to compete and maybe a practice squad guy. But that's why I wanted to look at all these 5 guys, just because there is such variety. I mean, we talked about a guy that could go, potentially 3rd round, Asiata maybe even in the 2nd round toward the end. The Seahawks have been known to pick guys a little bit early if they know that they have their guy that they want and they don't want somebody else to get them. So a little bit of variety there.
Yeah, I like starting out with Asiata there out of those guys. I mean, I think he intrigues me the most, and that'd be somebody that I'd be excited. Look, man, if you spend a couple 6th or 2nd, 3rd round picks on offensive linemen, that That's nice. That makes me happy.
Yeah.
That makes me much happier at that point. You betcha.
Well, one guy not on this list, but I saw a tweet from Jared Stanger, and he's a good guy to follow for Seahawks draft stuff. Jared Stanger tweeted out that the Seahawks may be interested in bringing in Trey Griffey, wide receiver from University of Arizona. Trey also drafted by the Mariners in 2016 in the 24th round. So if you can decode all that last name along with the Mariners, number 24, you might deduce that Trey Griffey is the son of Ken Griffey Jr.
Is that a true fact?
That's a true fact.
Wow. Okay.
But could be another one of those undrafted free agent pickups. Griffey not.
Oh, and that'd be one of those little stories that writes itself, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, wouldn't all the little beat reporters just eat that crap up? I mean, I can see Dave Bowling now just writing his little article, all excited about it.
Yeah.
Low hanging fruit for the poor old beat reporters, man.
Throw some bones the beat reporters way.
Who the struggle is real right now for the beat reporters. Let's not lie, Brandon. The struggle is real.
You think they've gotten all of the Richard Sherman trade rumors out of their system yet?
I don't know. Look, so I do have some sympathy. I do. In the idea that we do this once a week, right?
They have to feed their family off of it.
Right. Day in, day out.
Right.
So, I get it to a degree, but when I see headlines like Seahawks situation with Richard Sherman becomes messy or, like things like that. No, it hasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exact same.
Because at the end of the day, where did all this come from again?
It came from a dude on a podcast, Adam.
What? Wow. So this wasn't like news then?
No.
But somehow each story begets another story. So no, I don't think they're done with it. I don't think they're done with it yet.
No.
I mean, there's new ones every day.
Well, and I think the reason why the Richard Sherman trade rumor story has continued is because this last week, Carroll and Schneider both met with the media at the league meetings, and they asked him the question about it. And basing my opinion off of the articles that I've read, I have to think that beat reporters were expecting Carroll's response to be something different. Because I look at Greg Bell of the Tacoma News Tribune. He writes, asked Wednesday by reporters in Arizona about the rumor Seattle could trade Sherman if the team found the right price, Carroll could have answered 10 different ways than he did. Here's one obvious way. Richard Sherman is a bedrock of this team. We want him to be a Seahawk for life. So Bell is basing his opinion off of
what he would have liked to hear.
Carroll not answering the way that he would have expected him to answer, to downplay it.
Right. Well, that clearly means Sherman's on his way out. Like,
clearly.
He's gone, man. He's gone. An idea so the whole thing, right, was Carroll saying like, yeah, I mean, we get phone calls and we listen to all sorts of trade offers, right? I mean, that was more or less it.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I promise you one thing. Every team has that happen to them. You don't think the Patriots have gotten phone calls saying, hey, Bill, you interested in trading Tom Brady? Since you got, your up-and-coming quarterback waiting in the wings and all that, and Brady's turned 40 and all that, and, maybe we could, sweeten the deal, trade you one thing here, and we know how you go past players that are over the hill. You don't think they've gotten that phone call?
I'm sure they have.
Just doing your due diligence as a GM, if you're the Browns or the Texans or, any of these teams searching for a quarterback, or even the Broncos. You don't think John Elway didn't? I promise you John Elway called Bill Belichick and asked him that question. Just looking for that next aging veteran to plug in and make another run. Like that makes sense. Now, I promise you Bill said no.
Yeah.
But, if the price was right, they would do it. They would.
And if the media asked Bill if he actually had that discussion, he would say,
but there would be a few words in there like, we listen to all trade offers, whether it's Brady or any other quarterback.
I don't know. That sounds too intelligible for Belichick for me when asked a question like that.
Do you think he'd just give him an eye roll?
Probably.
Yeah, that might be more up his alley. But that's the thing, right? So no matter what team you are, what star you are on that team, you get calls about every dude in the league.
I didn't see any reporters with a follow-up question asking if anybody's called to make an offer for Jimmy Graham or make an offer for Cam Chancellor or make an offer for KJ Wright. I mean, there's a ton of different stars on this team that any other team could call and ask for a trade offer, or even, make a trade offer that the Seahawks would listen to.
I promise you that John Schneider has answered the phone, and on the other end of the line, the person that has called has asked him about Cam Chancellor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
And he listened.
No.
So Cam Chancellor's gone too.
He's gone
obviously.
too. Obviously.
The whole team's gone.
Well, yeah.
We're trading everybody.
Earl Thomas, by the time the season rolls around, Earl Thomas will be the only original member of the Legion of Boom.
Yeah, and even him, they'll be looking to cut him in the preseason probably.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly.
According to all the rumors. I get it, guys. I mean, we kind of mockingly talk about this in all that, and I've seen... One of the funny things is that, for example, you see a bad headline, say 247 Sports, and so I clicked on one.
It's your go-to.
Not to read the article, but I was just curious because it was something like, things, relationship between Seahawks and Sherman have chilled or they're soured or something like that. It was something along those lines. And just to read the comments, just to see, are people buying into this or as 12s? How does that work? And it was 670 comments. And I read through about 15 of them, the top 15, 20.
Yeah.
And every one of them was the relationship hasn't soured. The next one is, this is fake news. This is BS. Da-da-da-da-da. Everybody sees through this, man. It is a joke. And so we feel your pain, man. It's tough to go through the offseason having to read this garbage. Unfortunately, these reporters have to feed their families. I don't know what the solution is. I really don't. Maybe the solution is to do exercises like we just did. Every day of the week, you take the 5 guys that have visited the Seahawks and you do a little profile about them. Look, that's real news. That's something that you can look at and say, there's an actual probability that the Seahawks would, a likely probability, the Seahawks could draft one of these guys based on their history. Let's take a look at them. That's one way to fill 5 days right there without saying, Richard Sherman talks too much and they're tired of him.
Well, I think we also have to factor in that a lot of these writers also have editors that assign them stories based on the stories that get the most clicks. So if there's a lot of clicks going out there for Richard Sherman stories, hey, you need to write up a Richard Sherman story, like Jeffrey Arnold from the Oregonian. He puts together this article that says Richard Sherman can be, quote, exposed on an island.
Somebody pulled down his pants or something? What happened?
Well, here's the full quote. Says he's never been a great athlete, says a former NFL defensive coordinator.
No way.
Telling NFL.com. He wins with his technique and IQ. If he isn't focused or on top of his mental game, he can definitely be exposed on the island.
So if he's not playing at top form, then he's not playing at top form?
Right.
If he's not at the top of his game, then he might be able to beat. Right. Huh. What a story. No way.
It's incredible.
Turns out when I'm not fully hydrated, I don't run as fast.
Yeah.
I'm not at the top of my game.
I know.
That's stupid. Man,
I clicked, Adam.
So I think maybe the problem here is, Brandan, because you brought up, all right, so these editors look at the writers and they say, all right, man, these are the stories that are getting clicks. So is the real problem, do we all need to look in the mirrors ourselves and say, let's just stop clicking? Because if we all stop clicking, then they wouldn't write these stories, right? Because they're getting no clicks. Mm-hmm. It's supply and demand, right? Or is it the other way around? Are they supplying it and then therefore you're like, all right, and then you click on it? Is it still their fault? I don't know.
I'm going to blame it on the editors.
Okay. All right. So you went off the board.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's fine. You want to blame them? That's
because
fine.
If it's a Seahawks story, I'm probably going to click on it anyway, especially if it's something that I haven't seen in other places.
If Richard
the Richard Sherman trade rumors, I've seen that headline in so many places. I don't need to click. But the fact that somebody said Richard Sherman could get
exposed.
That's the word.
Exposed. Yes, the inflammatory language. It's unbelievable.
But let's talk about some actual news that came out of this last week with the meetings with Carroll and Schneider, because Pete Carroll at the NFL League meetings, he gave us some comments that gives us an idea of how the offensive line may come together. And judging by it, we talked about what would make for some drastic changes we're potentially seeing an entirely different line apart from Justin Britt at center, with no guys coming back to their same position apart from Britt in the 2017 season.
So wait, I just to make sure I understand where you're coming from here, there may be a lack of continuity on the offensive line for the Seattle Seahawks?
Yes.
No way. No way. I'm stunned.
I know. It's for the fourth straight season, right?
Right.
So maybe I guess we shouldn't be surprised, but you hear John Schneider talk about the importance of continuity, yet they haven't been able to get quite to that level yet. You want to put your best guys out there, though, right?
I think that's kind of the point. And once you find guys that can really play and play well at that position, then you can keep them there and build the continuity. One thing about my railing on the offensive line has been like Tim Moon in the Seahawks Ring of Honor, the Seahawkers podcast Ring of Honor. We were going back and forth a little bit about offensive linemen. And his big point was, hey, relax. We don't need all these guys. We don't need to go and reshuffle everything. Just need to keep everything the same and allow these guys to grow. Fant's going to get better, and Gilliam's going to get better, and all these young, and Ifedi's going to get better. All these young guys are going to grow, and eventually they'll become a good offensive line. And I guess my thought process on it is that could absolutely be true, and that is definitely one way you could go about it. And if this were 2012, and we were looking at our team with all of our core being, young bucks just getting it going, and saying, hey, I want to grow with these young offensive linemen for them to become the offensive line that we want, I would have been like, yeah, that strategy makes sense to me because, in 2012, we weren't knocking on the door. It was seemingly going into 2012, right? I don't think any of us thought you're knocking on the door of a championship, right?
Well,
that wasn't your expectations.
Not in terms of the offense, but I know in 2012 we looked at the Seahawks defense and said that this is going to be a championship caliber defense.
Yeah, or at least a very good defense. No, in
2012 we were saying championship caliber.
Well, fine. But point being is, sure, if the whole team's young and you're right at the beginning of your window and you want to grow with those guys, great. But that's not where we are right now. We have another 2 to 3 years with this core to really make a go at it. I don't want to waste. We just wasted one. We just wasted one last year trying to take the grow with the young guy approach. I don't want to do that again. I don't want to waste these magical last 2 to 3 years that you're going to get with this core of guys before you start seeing you kind of break up and you bring in new dudes. And maybe the next core will be great and you can go from there. That's fine. But with this, you're in the middle of a championship run. So let's reload and get better as quickly as possible, as nearly as instantaneously as possible. So that's why I would like to see the change that Pete Carroll kind of alluded to in to get your best guys out there right now and try to get better instantly.
And really, it's not too much of a drastic change in terms of personnel right now until we know what kind of draft picks that they're working with. But I think it gave us some kind of clue as to where they might look for the highest draft pick, just based on, for example, on the left side, you have Luke Joeckel, George Fant, probably battling out for the tackle position. Maybe you throw Reese Odiambo in there. Mm-hmm. And although the interesting thing to me, Ode Abushi, the guy that we recently picked up, he was not mentioned for the left side, but he played left side for the Jets. He played on the left side for the Texans. But they specifically mentioned Abushi on the right side. So really, you have Odiambo, Fant, Joeckel, and maybe Glowinski at that left guard spot. But it was also interesting to me that Pete Carroll specifically mentioned that Glowinski, his natural position, was playing on the right side, which makes me think you have about 3 guys, with Joeckel maybe being the guy who ends up at left guard if he doesn't win the tackle job. And then so maybe Fant and Odiambo are fighting out for that. But so you have 3 guys there. I want to get back to that. And then on the right side, you have Jermaine Ifedi, Gary Gilliam, kind of at the tackle position. And then Abushi, Schneider mentioned that they're kind of looking at him on the right side in the guard position. So it really sounds like Pete Carroll is planning on kicking Ifedi out to tackle to compete at the right tackle job now.
Yes. Yeah, he said specifically that the future is at right tackle,
right,
for Ifedi. So what that made me do when I saw that, it made me question one thing. So if you draft him and you look at him and you think that the future for this guy is at right tackle, why the hell do you kick him to right guard his first year?
Well,
like, why do you have him play a different position? Why don't you have him go out there and take his licks at right tackle in his first year? Why did you waste a whole season with him at a position that you don't eventually see him playing?
Essentially what I've got from listening to like John Clayton, for example, who, very close to the team, I think gets a lot of information from the team. I think it was important to them to make sure that he could be one of those guys with his hand on the ground. And because going from a spread system in college and then to the NFL, they see that as kind of a progression to where you to start at guard and then move out to tackle. Whereas with Britt, it kind of worked out to where, he started at right tackle and then they tried him at guard and then moved him into center. And now he's had some success. So maybe they're just figuring out the reverse Britt progression, right? Except they've skipped a year with, not having Ifedi play center.
So you find a progression that works and then you do the opposite of it?
Well, it's a progression. It's still a progression, but you've skipped the year at center now.
It's a reverse progression. It's like reverse psychologying somebody. Like you can't, that's a bad idea. I don't know. But I do. So here's the thing. Even though the idea that they, in my mind, more or less wasted a year with Ifedi playing right guard, I still really like the idea of him moving out to right tackle.
Yeah.
Back to his natural position and being in a 2-point stance a little more often and those sort of things. I do like that. I think that's really solid. As far as the left side is concerned, I'd be really surprised if Glowinski isn't your starting left guard. I mean, I know you are so dubious of Luke Jokel being your left tackle, but he is a significant upgrade over George Fant. Look, if his knee is right at all, he ought to be your starting left tackle.
What if Odiombo is your starting left tackle?
I'd be surprised. Just the way that they've given Odiombo chances. I don't know that that's his natural position per se.
They did say that Odiombo is a left side guy. So whether that means left guard or left tackle, he's definitely going to be on the left side.
Yeah, they talked about him at guard a lot.
Yeah.
So I think they view him more as a guard. Or I really think they look at Odiombo as that swing guy who's your backup guy. That seems to be what his role is at this point. I think you keep Fant on the roster for future development. So I very much think that they're going to give Ibushi every chance to start at right guard, along with whoever it is that they draft. I think that's going to be your competition at right guard.
I do see Ibushi being the competition at right guard, but I think Glowinski is going to end up being your right guard. And I think left guard is where they're going to be looking to draft high. And whether or not it's Asiata, who we talked about to start off the show, or maybe a guy like Nico Saragusa, who's also been mentioned in that area, that bottom of the third round type area.
Him.
Also, high score on this trench explosion formula that Rob Staten's put together.
Yeah, and I liked his nastiness at the combine, man. Like he was always getting into it. Yeah. I like him. Yeah, so I like him.
I think he could be another guy that, there's Forrest Lamp. If he manages to fall to the Seahawks in the first round, or maybe they trade back a little bit, and
I think they're going to go corner in the first round.
It feels that way, but
yeah,
who knows?
Yeah,
I think it only feels that way because I've seen so many mock drafts that have the Seahawks taking a corner.
That might be. Maybe it's a frequency bias.
Yeah,
that could be. I think they're looking at that defensive backfield, and they do want to get better. And I mean, the McDougald signing is a big sign of that, right?
Oh yeah, and Carroll mentioned that at the meetings too. That was kind of the other big news item, is that McDougald as the guy in that they brought in Brandon Browner last offseason to kind of play that big nickel, that Buffalo defense, to where you have 3 safeties on the field essentially at one time. And so you could have, and we've seen the Seahawks play a lot of 4-2-5. So where you have 4 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers, and 5 defensive backs. I mean, even with, when you're in regular nickel, right, you got the 5 defensive backs.
Yeah.
And it seems to me, if you were just going into the season today without any draft picks, you could have your 2 starting corners be Jeremy Lane, where he had a lot more success on the outside than he did playing slot corner. Jeremy Lane playing outside opposite Richard Sherman. And
until Shed's healthy again,
until Shed's healthy again, and you got and so those guys can fight it out for that. But now we've seen Rob Staten in his mock drafts kind of go toward the Dory Jackson cornerback, who would be kind of fill that slot cornerback role. Which
is he the one that tore up his Achilles from Washington? Is that same guy, or is that a different guy?
That's a different guy. No, this guy is I think out of one of the Floridas.
One of the Floridas?
One of the Floridas.
We don't need more than one Florida. One Florida is too damn much. We don't need more Floridas.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. But so where, you can have McDougal on the field along with Earl Thomas and Cam Chancellor and the two outside guys. So it could be interesting to see if they play it more that way.
I love the idea of having three safeties on the field. I really do. That kind of hybrid linebacker safety guy that plays up in the box, a lot like Cam does, I guess. But, the league, we're not just talking about the Seahawks playing in nickel quite a bit. I think it was a little over 70% of the time. The league as a whole plays in nickel quite a bit now.
Yeah.
It's just the way that it's gone. So with the rules being skewed to favor the passing game, I mean, that's what teams gravitate towards. So you're going to end up with, a nickel guy on the field a lot. And even heard Schneider talk about how he doesn't really view the strong side linebacker as being a super important position, mainly because, he's out there maybe 15, 17 snaps a game, so because you're in nickel all the time.
Right.
So the idea of having a guy like McDougal to come out there, or one of these very talented corners that seem to be in this draft, that's pretty cool to me. I'd like to see that. I think that takes the LOB to a whole nother level at that point. And you have the kind of depth then with Nico Thorpe, backing things up and all that, to where now a position that looked like it was feeling a little weak, coming out of the season, starts to feel like a real strength again.
Adoree Jackson is a corner from USC.
Not a Florida.
I know why I had the Florida connection, though, because Rob Staten referred to him as the Percy Harvin at cornerback position.
In terms of attitude or ability?
Ability, the Percy Harvin of cornerbacks.
Mm-hmm.
And so Percy Harvin, a Florida guy. So that's why I had that. But yeah, Adoree Jackson, USC.
Wow. Now, there you go, folks. Behind the curtain of the inner workings of the mind of Brandon Schultz. Right there. That's how that went together.
Yeah, there you go. I knew it all fit together somehow.
It did. That was very beautiful mind. I'm very impressed.
All right. Well, should we talk about the one thing that I think we've saved for the end of this first hour here, and that is the first arrest of the offseason for the Seahawks. And
the first what? Oh, first arrest.
The first arrest, yeah. Right. Because, I think we've all Googled our name before to see what comes up, right? And
yeah, apparently there's a NASCAR pit crew guy named Adam Emmert who is fairly famous, and then also a linebacker, from 5, 6, 7 years ago from Texas Tech.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Apparently, I don't. Me personally, I don't rank high on the Adam Emmerts. No.
But if you're Trevon Boykin, I don't think you want to Google your name right now, because the most prominent photo is a mugshot. And I don't know how long it's been that way, because this picture was actually from his last arrest after the Senior Bowl. So if you're to the point in your life where you have to look at the date stamp closely on a mugshot photo, I think you've been arrested too many times.
Look, man, I'll say this in Trevon Boykin's defense, okay? I've been arrested twice.
Twice?
It happened. Twice. Yeah. Once because I got a ticket for having a taillight out. And look, at the end of the day, I thought it was bull crap. So I didn't pay it. And so I ended up going to jail over that after getting pulled over for, like not using your blinker or something, because then they turns into having an outstanding warrant. And so I was in jail for like 20 minutes. And then the other was I got a ticket for a California stop at a stop sign, which is a bunch of crap because my car didn't run worth a darn, and it was the middle of winter and it was cold, and it really didn't run when it was cold. And so to come to a full and complete stop and get it back going again with as much as it missed was a real struggle. Like, it was bad. And not only that, but there was nobody around. Nobody. And so this cop, she comes up and she says to me, she goes, all right, I got you for the stop here, all that. And she looks back at my daughter in the back seat, and she goes, oh, it's really nice that, you've got got the kid and she's all buckled up and you're doing the right thing and all that. That's really good to see. I appreciate seeing that. I was like, oh, all right, well, good. I had all my other things in order and still wrote me the ticket after I explained why I had to do a California stop. It was a matter of practicality.
Yeah.
And besides that, all the stop signs with a white border, they're optional. Don't look that up. But the point is that was a bunch of bullcrap, so I didn't pay it. So like 2 years later, I'm downtown, a lot like Trevon Boykin, out drinking, hanging out with your homies. And a couple of my friends start horsing around, right? And one throws the other dudes into the bushes. Like, it wasn't a real fight. They were just messing around. Boop! All the cops roll up real quick because it was right at bar close. Checked everybody ID, which was ridiculous. Like, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just standing on the sidewalk. Yet they checked my ID. And apparently there was a warrant out because I didn't pay the BS rolling stop ticket. And yeah, so I went to jail for the night. It happens. I'm just saying it happens. And does that make me a criminal? Does that make me a bad guy? Would that make me somebody to kick off the team? No. And I think you're going to see the same thing with Trevon Boykin here because honestly, he got in a car after drinking for a night. Yeah, that's his crime.
We haven't even laid out yet what exactly happened. The first time he was arrested, back in 2016 before the Seahawks even drafted him.
Right.
He was on tape punching a police officer.
Now, see, that's over the line. That was probably a bad one,
Yeah. The more egregious offense was the first arrest. And this one, it was an early Monday morning, so effectively Sunday night. He arrested on suspicion of marijuana possession and public intoxication. And this happened after he got into a car. And the person driving the car ended up backing over and hurting 7 people and sending them to the hospital. And the person driving the car
hit 4 people on the sidewalk and then ran through a wall into a bar.
Initial reports were 4 people, and I think they upgraded it to about 7 people.
Oh, wow.
That's too many.
And the unfortunate thing is that it actually hurt the bartender inside, too.
You don't want to do that.
But not because she struck him with a car, but because the force of the impact knocked a cooler off of a shelf up above him and it hit him in the head. That's just a bad break.
That's bad.
So that added to the body count, but that's tough.
The initial reports did kind of make it sound like Boykin was the one driving the car, right? Because he was arrested after car crash.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, he trusted another person to get the driving done, and she screwed up, and he was drunk, and they had some weed in the car. And then he got arrested for that.
Yeah, well, it is Texas. Add Texas to the list of places where you don't want to be doing anything wrong.
Yeah, well, that's true, I suppose.
Because public intoxication, it sounds like, is a judgment call by...
Well, yeah, and not only that, he wasn't publicly intoxicated. He was in the privacy of his motor vehicle or hers. So how is that being publicly intoxicated until she ran into a bunch of crap and he had to step out of the car?
Yeah.
And now he's publicly intoxicated.
Right.
What a joke.
It definitely sounds like she shouldn't have been driving either. So, they have these services where people drive you around. Cabs, they've had them forever.
Yeah. And there's that Uber thing and there's other stuff like that. Yeah. I mean, you're an NFL player, call a car. Just call a car, man.
Right. Yeah. Boykin is not without fault. I mean, there were some judgment issues here.
That's not the greatest choice, but how old is Boykin? He's 22?
Yeah, he's a young guy.
Okay. Out of all the bad choices a person can make, that's not the worst. That's not the worst choice a person can make. He could have punched a cop again.
Right. He could have made worse choices. Exactly. The Seahawks did issue a statement, said, "We are aware of the situation involving Trevon Boykin. We are still gathering information and are disappointed." And that's been almost a week now, and I haven't seen any updates. So
I saw Pete Carroll with a quote of something of, and I'm going to paraphrase, I don't remember the exact quote, but it was something along the lines of, look, we've seen the charges. We're pretty confident it's all going to buff out and he's going to be back. That was more or less.
Yeah. They did make it sound, though, as though someone's going to be coming in to compete.
Sure. So did Jake Heaps did last year, right? It's not going to be Colin Kaepernick, I can tell you that.
Well, they don't have the cap space for Colin Kaepernick.
Wait. Oh, so you used a fact to back up the idea that Colin Kaepernick isn't going to come to the Seattle Seahawks. Just to call out some... Never mind. I'll come back to that.
Okay, you come back to that. But I just know that in terms of Kaepernick, people talk about bringing him in. And they kind of gloss over the salary cap. I don't expect everybody to be up on where the Seahawks are in terms of salary cap. But, if you're dropping Trevon Boykin because you think this is too much of a distraction. I mean, I look down this list of quarterbacks that are out there, the top quarterbacks, and I see all kinds of distractions. I mean, if Colin Kaepernick's your number one guy, he's going to be a distraction coming on the team. Obviously, there's going to be his history with Richard Sherman, and because Richard Sherman's one of his favorite targets as wide receiver.
I don't see him as a controversial figure, really. Like I don't see that there's a lot of distraction with him.
I would see media distraction, maybe not team distraction.
Yeah, and I even think being the backup guy in all that in a new team, a season removed from the audacity to take a knee, I don't see that having a lot of legs for another year.
Oh, not for a full year. But I would, in terms of distractions, though, I see him being more of a distraction than this Trevon Boykin thing. Jay Cutler, number 2 on the list. I could see him being a distraction because Robert Griffin III coming out the same year that Russell Wilson was drafted, the number 2 guy, the guy that beat him out for Rookie of the Year.
I think that's another guy, too, where sure, that he would have been a distraction 2 years ago. But I think the way that his career has gone, I mean, he's just a guy that's going to come in and compete at that point. If you were going to look at that even,
sure. And then, I mean, now we're getting down to Ryan Fitzpatrick, and
everybody couldn't turn away from the beard. that'd be a distraction.
That's
just
true.
The beard itself.
I know I would have a hard time.
He's the most controversial, distracting guy on this list because of that giant plumage on his face.
And then I had Case Keenum at number 5, but I think he got picked up by the Vikings or the Bears.
Oh, fantastic.
One of the North teams.
Oh, okay. Well, cool for them, I guess. Look, the thing with the idea that this would be distracting, the Trevon Boykin thing, I promise you, if you ask anybody in week 7 of this upcoming year about Trevon Boykin that isn't a really diehard 12 about Trevon Boykin, they're not going to remember this at all. In fact, I bet you could ask him right now and nobody would even know that this happened. The distraction level of this is ultra low.
Well, I'm sure we'll be talking about that more as the offseason goes on, and maybe we will get some more information. But Adam, what do you say we get to the second half of the show?
Sounds like a plan, man. Let's do it.
All right. Well, before we get to that, real quick, let's talk about Pristine Auction. Pristine. You can also go to Seahawkerspodcast.com/auction if you want to go straight to all the Seahawks offerings at Pristine Auction.
Hit me with something cool, man. What do they got? What do they got going this week?
Well, looking down the list, and I've seen this come up quite a bit. I think they have a few of these. So a Warren Moon full-sized signed helmet. With the Hall of Fame 2006 inscription. I know when I think of Seahawks Hall of Famers, you think of Largent, Kennedy, and Walter Jones. I include Warren Moon on my list of Seahawks Hall of Famers. He's not like Jerry Rice.
No, he actually played, significant. Yeah, sure.
He's your announcer.
Yeah, and I mean, he went to UW. I get it.
Yeah, he's a local guy.
Yeah. No, I get that. Now, the real question is it the new style of helmet or is it the old silver helmet?
Oh, it's the old silver helmet.
Ooh, even better.
Yeah.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I like it.
I'd be excited about that.
One thing that I haven't talked about that Pristine Auction has that we haven't mentioned, they have a daily auction that ends nightly.
So you don't even have to wait? It's just a day?
It's one day, daily auctions. Cool. And I like this. They have a Malcolm Smith signed Super Bowl 48
MVP.
Dude, speaking of Malcolm Smith, dude got paid by the 49ers. Did you see that?
No way. Really? Keep getting them checks, Malcolm.
Check this out. 5 years, $26.5 million contract. $11.5 million guaranteed.
I guess when you got cap space to burn, man. Look, I know one thing. Malcolm Smith can buy a lot of things on Pristine Auction now.
Yeah, he sure can. Especially when $11.5 million of that is guaranteed. More guaranteed money than Bobby Wagner.
That's that is some nice cheddar and a little absurd. But good for him. Good for him. Keep getting them checks.
Yeah, I'm okay with the 49ers spending money in ridiculous ways. But you don't have to spend ridiculous money on Pristine Auction because all this stuff's affordable. If you don't think you can afford some of this stuff, just go to seahawkerspodcast.com/auction and check it out because it is much, much more affordable than you would think. And lots of good items here. Check it out, seahawkerspodcast.com/auction. The Seahawkers Podcast is the official podcast of the official booster club of the Seattle Seahawks, and we got the Seahawkers annual banquet coming up May 20th. I got my tickets this last week, so excited for that. Going to be on Armed Forces Day, May 20th, and once again in Bellevue. Should be a fun time.
You bet you guys. Check that out. Get your tickets. Get down there.
And one other piece of interesting news, because we talked to Amanda McDonald last offseason, who was helping get rally the 12s around getting bottled water sent up to Flint, Michigan. I saw this last week that Flint is getting water pipes installed after a lawsuit finally got settled.
It took a lawsuit? It didn't take the fact that there was just a crap ton of lead in their pipes?
Yeah, no, apparently they had to settle a lawsuit first, but getting done now.
Wow. That's cool. Well, I'm glad that it took, the court system to force people to do the right stinking thing when it comes to the freaking drinking water.
I think the difficulty around it was figuring out which group had to pay which amount, like how much responsibility was with each particular group, like how much the state had to pay, how much the feds had to pay. Like that part was complicated.
Sure. I mean,
but I don't know why we can't just do it and make,
that couldn't happen in like 3 meetings.
Yeah, exactly. Like people having clean water seems more important to me.
Yes, absolutely.
But definitely cool seeing how much the Seahawkers supported that effort. And so that was just something that jumped out at me. But what do you say we get in? We have some new members of the flock this week, Adam. We got some iTunes reviews. We got some email. And of course, we got our Do Better and Better at Life.
Fantastic.
Let's start off with a couple new members of the flock. A welcome to the flock to Stephen Henschel, who is in for a sticker, which I think I already got Stephen's in the mail. And also welcome to the flock to Andrew Russell, who just came in just this last evening, I think. I have to think that Andrew was going, geez, it's been more than 7 days. I wonder when the next show is, and probably checking his feed. And then it just sparked in the back of his mind that, if I'm checking the feed, then I should probably join the flock. Went to getintheflock.com, joined. So, Andrew, welcome.
Well done, fellas. Thank you so much for getting in the flock. Getting closer to that 300, ever so slowly.
Getting closer to 300 members of the flock. We're also getting close to 200 reviews on iTunes.
Holy smokes.
Checking those out. We're up to 197 reviews. Our listeners are crushing it in iTunes, Adam.
Yes, they are. Holy smokes.
The cool thing is I think we've taken down now every team-specific podcast out there. We just passed...
In terms of number of reviews?
In terms of number of reviews. So we just passed the Dallas Cowboys draft show. So I don't think there's anybody else left. So I'm kind of wondering, who do we take down next?
Well, I don't know, but we got to take down a big fish. We got to
If we want to go after maybe somebody a little bit bigger, you have the Ringer NFL show. We've talked about them, with Bill Lombardi.
Yeah.
They have 230 reviews.
Yeah, that's not Lombardi's new show.
No, that's the Ringer. But he was on the Ringer show, promoting his new show.
Yeah, it's like Schatz and another guy, right? Aaron Schatz or Schatz or whatever his name is.
But they're
a little dry.
It's within reach though. 230 reviews. I think we can take them down, and that's a show that's regularly I see it in the top 20 on iTunes.
It is?
I think.
All right, yeah. Let's go after that. I want those guys. Yeah, that's a bunch of crap. There's no way they should be rated higher just because Bill Simmons throws his weight around.
Yeah.
No.
Exactly.
No, that can't stand. We need to get to 230, people. For pride. For pride.
And two people that helped us get to 197. It says, first review from Option 8er. It says, great bridge to next season. Keep up the good work.
Awesome. Thanks, man. We're making an effort at it, dude. Like, we're trying to get you there till the fun starts.
And then from Jason 1997-6438 says,
is that his phone number? How many digits was that?
That's 8. So that's not even quite a social security number.
Oh, dang it. Maybe it says that. Nope, that's less than a credit card number.
Yeah. Try and decode that.
Yeah. Okay.
But says, just found you guys. Glad I did. As a lifelong Seahawks fan who grew up in Auburn, Washington, now living in New York City, you guys were a miracle find, especially in the offseason. I'm starved for some Hawks talk. Love the humorous approach you guys take and can't catfish and wait for the next season to start. Keep up the great work, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, man. It's tough when you move away from the Seattle area to get your Seahawks fix, no doubt. So appreciate the kind words for both of you guys. That's got to be his birthday.
But it's 6438, Adam. What month is 64?
Huh? You don't know what month 64 is?
No.
Oh, well, you need to do better then. It's Febutober.
Febutober.
Yeah.
Making them up at that point.
Just sure, why not? We're making up things all off season. Why not months?
Well, 1997 jumps out at me because that's the year that we graduated.
Hey, stop dating us, okay?
Okay. It's probably the year Jason was born.
Probably. Probably.
All right, let's get to some email.
All right, man. Hit it up.
Here's one from Gary, our Pick'em League champ. Says, guys, great job as always. I have a couple of thoughts coming out of my listening this morning. One, for the idea that removing the commercials between the kickoff and the start of the next drive isn't a decision the NFL needs to consider from a financial impact. Getting into economic theory, it would test the elasticity of the price that the networks are willing to bid when the next contract comes up.
No, it wouldn't. I'll tell you that straight up. No, it wouldn't.
Somewhere, the number crunchers at the networks have to decide what they're willing to pay based on the product and its ability to sell commercial time. Scarcity of the commercial space could make the fewer available spots worth more each and thus not change the overall bid. See, I think this is what you were kind of alluding to, Adam.
Yes, that would be exactly what I'm alluding to. But I couldn't use fancy words like elasticity.
No, elasticity.
Elasticity?
Yeah.
Okay.
But fewer spots could lead to a lower price being put on all the networks before they consider walking away and showing Little Hauschka on the Prairie reruns instead of winning a portion of the broadcast rights. The league office will probably dedicate more research to this decision than they did on determining the effects of concussions on players' long-term safety and health. Yeah,
that's a solid prediction.
That's a really solid prediction. Overall, Adam is probably right that removing the commercial break means little or nothing from an NFL perspective in terms of revenue. But as the old saying goes, in theory, there is no difference between theory and practice, but in practice, there is.
Yeah, that's a good theory.
For the Eddie Lacy bet, I think it's important to realize that 600 yards from scrimmage is just not that high of a bar, and thus...
Yeah, no crap. But to get Brandan to 600 was like pulling teeth. You should have heard him cry about it. Oh, man.
You were so confident is the reason why I thought, because you made it sound like...
even when I threw out 600, you're like, well, what about 500? That's just so much 600.
That's what I call being a good negotiator, Adam.
It sounds being a crier. That's what that is.
Got you to 600, though, didn't I?
I got you to 600, didn't I?
Oh, I'm glad that you think that way.
Yeah, look, that's easy money. Keychains for China food chubsters, I'm telling you.
Gary says being on Team Cheeseburger in Paradise shouldn't mean that anyone necessarily believes that the Eddie Lacy sighting was a great or even a good one. 600 yards from scrimmage over a 16-game season comes out to 38 freaking yards per game. Mm-hmm. Here are some guys that passed that level this year. Paul Perkins, Chris Ivory. Oh, Chris Ivory's good. Derrick Henry, Mike Gillislee. I don't know who that is. Jaquiz Rogers, Matt Asiata, Giovanni Bernard, Jalen Richard, Kristen Michael, Chris Thompson. Not exactly a who's who list of running backs. With Lacy's pass catching ability, I think the 600-yard threshold is simply too low to not be on Team Cheeseburger in Paradise. I look forward to being able to open up my beer bottles that aren't twist tops.
What I do like about this is that Gary agrees with me in principle, but just the number itself wasn't, the over-under number itself was where he had to draw the line. And look, 38 yards a game isn't that much, but you got to think too, he's splitting carries with a bunch of other talented dudes.
Well, that's what got me thinking 600 yards, because I expect Thomas Rawls to have a pretty solid season. So,
I expect CJ Prosise to as well.
I know. That's a lot of splitting carries. So
right. Yeah. So just 38 yards at that point per game. I mean, because sure, there could be a lot of games where he ends up with 75, 100 combined yards rushing and receiving. There could be a lot of games where he gets blanked.
Right.
You know, if Rawls is super hot for a game, you think they're going to put in Eddie Lacy?
Yeah, maybe not. Not for a ton of carries.
I mean, just, okay, so there's enough carries to go around, right? Like, how many times did Alex Collins see the ball last year?
Yeah, enough for, I think, well, and that's part of where my number came from. Alex Collins, I think, had 200 yards from scrimmage last year.
Right.
I think he can be 3 times better than Alex Collins.
Well, okay, so he'd need 3 times the touches.
He won't need 3 times the touches.
All
Alex
right,
Collins
even 2
wasn't
times
that
the
productive.
touches. Even 2 times the touches. I'm not even sure he'll get that.
Right. Well, Kristen Michael's not going to be on the team next year, so.
Yeah.
And Russell Wilson could be back into running form, too.
Oh, well, he ought to be.
I know.
Yeah, so there's a lot of factors here. So the 600 ended up, to me, like, I feel that confident in the whole idea that, yeah, I think 600 was fair enough.
Yeah. If you go to getintheflock.com, I think there's still time to join one of our teams. And, of course...
Was there a time limit?
I don't think there is.
Other than the start of the season?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all.
Getintheflock.com.
Yeah. It'll be here before you know it.
It's true. It feels like we're getting to, like, one of the valleys in the offseason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Once the draft happens, then it all starts to go downhill. And we're watching football again real quick.
July can be kind of long, though.
No, Brandon, it's going to be great. We're going to get through this. It's going to be done fast, and we're going to be watching football soon.
Although July is when we talk to our division rivals, so
exactly,
that's usually fun.
How am I the more optimistic dude this podcast? It's a very weird role reversal for us.
Next email from Garrett in Northern Ontario says, your shows absolutely fly by. I recognize that you're busy dudes and really appreciate the great content you put out. Having said that, I wish they were longer. Coming from love. Anyway, keep up the great work as usual.
Cool. Thanks, Garrett. Appreciate that. I don't know that we've gotten a lot of emails saying do this longer. I feel like it gets a little long-winded as it is. So maybe more frequent. Would that be better? I don't know that we could go longer.
Yeah. It would be harder to be more frequent too.
Yeah, well, there's that too. Yeah. Yeah. Unless we end up with a crap ton of Patreon support and then, we can quit our jobs.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I don't need to. I don't need to go to Arkansas and grind wheels, man. Like I'd happily not have to do that ever again.
I could imagine you would be.
Right. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Just need more members of the flock, and we want to get to 300 so we can give away that Pete Carroll autographed mini helmet too.
That's exactly right. Oh yeah, I forgot that was the goal. Yeah, let's do that.
And before we get into Do Better and Better at Life, I want to thank Chris for reviewing our Windows app in the Microsoft Store. Yeah, he says, great app for the best Seahawks pod. Great, easy to use, fantastic content. Thanks for coming to Windows Mobile. Go Hawks.
Dude, go Hawks. That's a solid review.
I know.
I didn't know anybody, other than Paul Allen was still using the Microsoft stuff.
Chris is too.
Yeah. So good for him. He's a team player. Like, he's even supporting the owner.
And if you want that app, if you're on a Windows phone, if you have a friend who's on a Windows phone, go to seahawkerspodcast.com/Windows and you can download the app there.
There you go. Yeah, and there's the iPhone app and the Android app. There's apps galore, man. We brought you all the ways to listen to the show.
It's true, and part of the reason we do that is because of the support we get from our members of the flock.
Exactly. We try hard to give you guys that value for value.
All right. What do you say we get into Do Better and Better at Life?
All right, Brandon. Let's get into the Do Better. And look, my Do Better this week is for some fellow podcasters out there. And look, just point of fact, we have more reviews on iTunes than they do. That's just, I'm not saying, I'm just saying, and our ratings higher with more reviews. So
wait, are we going after a bigger podcast, or are we going after like just some dudes like that are inconsequential?
Well, I feel like that their audience is probably larger for because of two factors. One being that their podcast is about the entire NFL. And the second factor being is that Bleacher Report absolutely plugs the hell out of these guys. So my do better this week is for the Sims and Lefkoe podcast. And the reason why it's for their podcast is I don't listen to their podcast all that often. I find that I disagree with Chris Sims quite often, which that's fine. That's not a reason to not listen. It's good to listen to differing opinions. But it just doesn't speak to me. Like it's not a podcast that I really do find myself enjoying. But flying to Arkansas this last weekend, I downloaded a couple podcasts to listen to while I was on the airplane. And so I downloaded their latest episode. And basically, there's a few things that really frustrated me, Brandon. And the first part is, like, we start the pod, right? And, you know, we may talk about a thing or two for like a minute or two, right? Before we start talking about what?
Football. Seahawks football in particular.
Seahawks football. Because the point of the show is what?
Seahawks football.
Seahawks football. I sat down, started listening to Sims and Lefkoe. And basically, they talked about a bottle of whiskey that their boss had gotten from somebody who wasn't them, but somehow he thought that he got it from them. They talked about Survivor. They talked about a bunch of what Chris Sims likes to eat at Chipotle. All this. So, you know, after about 3-4 minutes, I started thinking to myself, I wonder how long until they actually start talking about football. And so I began to actively track this. 12 minutes and 12 seconds in is how long it took before they finally mentioned freaking football. And you know what they finally mentioned? Jay Cutler's ass. That's what they started talking about when it came to the first thing to talk about regarding football. Like, I get that it's the offseason, and I know it's hard to come up with stuff to fill the airwaves with, but they're a weekly podcast like us, and they don't just have one team to find real news about. They've got 32 teams that they can find real news and talk about. But no, 12 minutes listening to Survivor talk and then to just hear about Jay Cutler's butt on Instagram. I was already frustrated, but I trudged on. I went on and I tried to listen to more. And then they came to the next most infuriating thing that I can imagine hearing about the Seahawks right now, when Lefkoe brings up the idea of, well, it's just a logical fit that Colin Kaepernick becomes the backup quarterback in Seattle because, you know, Trevon Boykin got in trouble and Richard Sherman and, you know, Cam Chancellor and Michael Bennett have come out and talked about how, you know, he's getting blackballed by the league and that they support that he's gone out and said things about him. You know, Pete Carroll's a real players coach and, you know, they know him intimately from playing him over and over again for a few years. And Pete Carroll saying that he could still be a legitimate starter. And Richard Sherman saying he was a top 20 quarterback still and blah, 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 blah. So it makes just perfect sense that he would fit in Seattle as the backup quarterback. Well, and then Chris Sims obviously chimes in at that point and goes, yeah, I kind of agree with all those points. You're right. Colin Kaepernick should be the backup quarterback in Seattle. Minor detail. We don't have the cap space for Colin Kaepernick. He's looking for major money still, or at least mid-tier money. We're not going to pay that money on a backup quarterback for no damn reason because Trevon Boykin's still going to be the backup quarterback. So after listening to 10 minutes about Chipotle, Survivor, whiskey bottles, and Jay Cutler's butt, I got to hear an unsubstantiated dumbass theory about who's going to be our backup quarterback. And for all of that, Sims and Lefkoe, do better. It's a bad episode, man.
Seems like an awful lot of Seahawks talk, though. I mean, they got the 12-12 in there for the when they actually started.
That was
the
not
NFL.
Intentional. No,
and then they're talking Seahawks backup quarterback slots. So you know,
man,
seems like it's practically a Seahawks podcast. So they maybe they are a competitor.
Sure, yeah. If you enjoy hearing about anything other than football,
how did we make it to
podcast.
this point in the show and not bring up Jay Cutler's butt?
Well, mainly because we're a podcast that talks about football and not butt cheeks, you know?
Oh, well, that's too bad.
Yeah.
Or not.
He's just got regular dude butt. Like, I don't understand the big hubbubaloo about it.
But you got to see it.
Hooray!
Well, my do better this week is for the Philadelphia Eagles. And I have to revise my do better from last week because I thought going into these league meetings that there was no proposal on the table that would allow for alternate helmets. But it turns out It turns out that even before we released the show, after the words had already come out of my mouth, I learned that the Eagles had proposed a rule that would have allowed for alternative helmets. And I got kind of excited. I got excited that this might actually happen. And then before I could even tweet out that it was a possibility, I saw another article that the Eagles withdrew 4 of their 5 rule change proposals, and this was one of them. So the Eagles had a proposal out there to that would allow for alternate helmets, because the Eagles throwback helmet, different color too. They had the proposal out there, and somehow they got pressured into withdrawing one of these proposals. It wasn't even voted on. So for the Eagles to have a rule out there that would have made for this alternate helmet idea to happen, and then to pull that back before the meetings even occur, man, do better.
Yeah, you need to pick which rules you're going to plug, a little better overall. The idea that, fine, we can't have the ultimate helmets, but you're still going to push the idea that you can't jump over the line on a field goal because of the rash of injuries we've seen from jumping over the line.
Yeah.
Man, all those career-ending injuries I've seen from dudes jumping over the line to block a kick, man, it is out of control. Just all the careers ended. I mean, the safety of it is just, it needed to be done.
I can't believe that the Seahawks even voted against it, especially after hearing from Pete Carroll, talk about how they just bombarded the owners and folks that were at the meeting with showing them, apparently just showing where, guys actually were in position to get hurt in terms of these jumping up to block the kicks. Because from what Pete Carroll makes it sound like, is that the Seahawks had 2 examples of where it worked really, really well. And I guess the Patriots have some examples too. We saw the example in the game last year between Denver and New Orleans. The PAT was blocked and it was returned for 2 points, and they got the victory. So you had moments where it worked out really well. Well, they didn't show those. They showed all the points where guys apparently, had their leg grabbed and kind of got flipped over. But like you mentioned, Adam, nobody getting significantly hurt. And yet, that rule change goes through. So nobody can jump over the line anymore. But it bothers me that they didn't even bring this to a proposal at the meetings.
Yeah, with the helmets?
With the helmets, yeah.
Yeah, that's ridiculous, man. All right, let's bring it back up. Let's go better at life, man. And my better at life than Skip Bayless this week is for Canadians. Canadians, you guys are awesome. And you surprised me with your awesomeness in a bunch of different ways that are very unique to Canada, and I enjoy it. I enjoy it very much. And the latest thing that Canadians do that I find to be both humorous and awesome is the fact, Brandan, that Canadians have come to start spocking their $5 bills.
Really?
And you would ask me,
what is spocking?
What is spocking a $5 bill, right?
Well, it sounds like are they putting Spock ears on their $5 bill?
Well, let me tell you exactly what they're doing. The $5 bill features former Prime Minister of Canada, Sir Wilfrid Laurier, and it's kind of a semi-profile of his face that's right from the neck up. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that if you draw him with like a bowl cut, with the straight bangs, and then also put pointy sideburns on him, and then draw some, uptick straight eyebrows, and then also put the Star Trek insignia on his collar, he's a dead ringer for Leonard Nimoy and Spock, and it looks just like him. It's fantastic. And so Canadians have taken to spocking their $5 bills. And so people will just draw in there with a pen and make Sir Wilfrid Laurier into Spock. It's fantastic. And I like it. It's very creative. The Canadian government, however, has come out and said that writing on a banknote may interfere with the security features and reduce its lifespan. Markings on a note may also prevent it from being accepted in a transaction. Furthermore, the Bank of Canada feels that writing and markings on banknotes are inappropriate as they are a symbol of our country and a source of national pride. Pull the stick out of your butt, Canadian Bank of Canada. Like, this is fun. You know what? If somebody handed me a spocked $5 bill, I'm not turning that down. That doesn't make it less appealing. It's ridiculous. This is the best thing I've seen in a long time. It made me chuckle. Canada, keep spocking your bills.
Probably makes their money worth more.
It ought to. They're works of art now.
I know.
That's why they're better at life than Skip Bayless this week.
This is incredible. This is like a thing because I see Spock and I also see a 5 where they turned him into Snape from Harry Potter.
Oh, I hadn't seen that one.
Yeah,
okay.
That one's pretty good. I see I see some American bills. I see someone put Bill Murray on turned Abraham Lincoln into Bill Murray.
That seems like a stretch.
It actually looks really good. They worked his nose out a little bit. And then somebody turned Andrew Jackson into Edward Scissorhands, which looks pretty awesome.
That I could see working. Yeah.
Well, here's an American 5 that's been spocked.
No way.
Yeah.
How's that work?
Maybe we need to do this more. But if you Google spocking, it immediately it comes up. You don't even have to say Canadian 5s or anything.
Right, just spocking. I like it. You turn Spock into a verb.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Well, I wish my Better Life was as fun, but my Better Life this week is for Dolphins owner Stephen Ross, who is the only dissenting vote on moving the Raiders to Las Vegas. And while I think Vegas is a great town for the Raiders, I also think that Oakland was a great town for the Raiders. And
you think?
Yeah. But his quote, this is why he landed on my Better Life this week, is he said, "My position today was that we as owners and as a league owe it to fans to do everything we can to stay in the communities that have supported us until all options have been exhausted." And to me, if Mark Davis couldn't find the money to pay for a stadium to build it to keep the team in Oakland, then I think he should have considered to either selling it to somebody who could, or if there was no local buyer, or maybe a partner that could come in to help make it work. And if there's no person locally that's willing to buy the team, then maybe owners should be able to move out of their original towns. But Oakland, man, they've been, apart from moving to LA for a few years, that team has been in Oakland for a long time. And I don't like this trend of seeing teams move to more friendly areas where they can get more local money to build their stadium, public money. I'd like to see teams stay where they are. I don't like that San Diego's having to move up to LA. I don't like, the St. Louis move was a little bit different because they're moving back to their original town of Los Angeles. So the LA Rams, to me, that seems okay. But moving out of San Diego and now the Raiders potentially moving to Las Vegas out of Oakland, definitely a bummer. And so for Stephen Ross, being the sole owner willing to vote no, be that sole dissenting vote, better at life than Skip Bayless.
For sure. There was a lot of reasons that he gave, or that you kind of go into his decision-making process on voting no. And one of them is that when he went before Miami County or whatever to get public funding for his stadium, they were just coming off of the idea that they just built the Marlins a new stadium, and that would have been kind of a flop. Mm-hmm. And so he didn't get any public money. And so what he did was he actually took out his own cheddar and built a stadium. And last time I checked, Stephen Ross is still doing all right. Yeah. And you make a good point. I mean, the Raiders are Oakland. I mean, Oakland and the Raiders, like, they are synonymous. Like, they go together. That town fits that franchise. That franchise fits that town. That's where they belong. That's their home. Are you too good for your home?
Stay in your home.
Yeah, stay in your home. And they really did belong there. The other thing, too, is the idea that, all right, fine, so the public wasn't going to finance your stadium. Well, you found partners to build the Vegas stadium. You know, whether it was big money, but you couldn't scrape together a bunch of minority owners or something like minority bidders or things like that to build a stadium in Oakland. Like, I understand that Mark Davis isn't as rich as Stephen Ross. I mean, he's a real estate magnate.
Right.
Like, I get that. But yeah, I mean, he could still gotten this done. And the thing that really peeves me the most about all this is, you want to know why all those other owners were so quick to vote for it?
Because they get big money for voting
money.
yes.
And I tried to look it up, and I couldn't find the actual number. But
I thought it was in the neighborhood of 50 million.
Yeah. Okay. So I thought it was 54 million. That was the number that stuck in my head.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, each team. So how in the world do they get that money? Like, so they get the money from relocating somehow. So that means that's got to come from somewhere. That's got to come from the Las Vegas taxpayers when it's all said and done, right? From the relocation fees and all that.
That's a lot of money.
It was either 25 or 50 million. It was in that range for each team. So all these teams, like, they profited off of the Raiders' move when it was all said and done, and profiting off of, eventually the taxpayers of people in Las Vegas. I mean, you guys all couldn't have done without that 25 million and kept the Raiders where they are and found a way to build a stadium and keep the tradition that is the NFL and the Oakland Raiders. It's ridiculous, man. I'm with you on this. It's bad. Stephen Ross, for being the only guy with the backbone on this one, he is better at life.
All right, Adam. Well, I think that does it for our show this week.
Sweet, man. I got to go pick up the kid anyway, so.
It is that time.
Good timing. But I think with that,
there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.